A man named George is traveling with just a backpack, taking in his surroundings. He's been going from town to town, searching for a fresh start. When he reaches Los Angeles, he heads straight to a job center. But due to a technical problem, the food aid program is temporarily down. During his interview, he explains that things collapsed in his home state after many banks shut down. The staff tells him there's nothing available. Once again, George's hope fades. Wandering the busy streets, unsure of where to go, George stops to listen to a street preacher surrounded by a few people. The preacher speaks with intensity, claiming powerful forces are secretly controlling the world. George listens briefly, curious, but leaves when he sees a police car nearby. As he walks past a store, he notices a man blankly staring at a screen playing bizarre ads. The man looks completely hypnotized. George shrugs and keeps walking. He eventually finds a temporary shelter and decides to sleep there. Nearby, a woman is glued to a TV show about a celebrity obsessed with staying young. Tired, George sits down quietly and reflects. The next morning, he tries to get work at a construction site. At first, the foreman refuses because only union members are allowed. But George insists it's his last chance. The foreman gives in and agrees to a day's pay after several days of work. George joins the crew and starts doing the hard labor. One worker, Frank, notices George's situation and offers to help. He tells George about a place where he can get food, rest, and clean up. George hesitates but agrees. On the way, Frank talks about a place called Justiceville on 4th Street, where people gather for support. They arrive at a warm community filled with people from different backgrounds. Everyone helps each other, and even the kids seem happy. A man named Gilbert gives George a simple job to help out. Later, George enjoys a decent meal. Frank opens up about his past, how he left Detroit after many factories closed, hoping to provide for his family. He blames the rich decision-makers for the suffering of workers. He says he's had enough and won't stay silent if another factory shuts down. George, more calm, encourages patience, though he too feels the pressure of survival. All he wants is a fair chance to start over. That evening, George walks through the camp and sees some people watching a flashy nail commercial. Suddenly, the signal cuts out. A nervous man appears, delivering a strange warning. He claims the world is an illusion created by unknown forces using signals to control minds and keep people docile. He says scientists uncovered this truth, but their voices were silenced. These signals prevent free thinking and widen the gap between rich and poor. But the group quickly changes the channel. George notices a blind preacher nearby, repeating the same warning from the TV. Moments later, Gilbert rushes in and quietly pulls the preacher aside. George watches from a distance, sensing something odd. Gilbert leads the preacher back to a nearby church, and George stays alert. The next morning, George casually brings up the church, but Gilbert brushes it off, saying they just feed the homeless. He insists everything's fine. Later, the strange message interrupts the TV again. The same man urges people to fight back against the mind control. The signal causes painful headaches, and everyone is relieved when sports return on screen. Gilbert quickly heads to the church again, and this time George follows him. Inside, he hears choir music. Everything looks normal at first. But as he looks around more carefully, George finds a hidden area in the church. There, he discovers a small lab filled with chemicals and unusual equipment. On one of the walls, there's a mysterious message, "They live, we sleep." Inside the church, a loud choir recording is playing, not live music, but a tape designed to cover up the real reason people are gathering there. Behind a hidden wall, a secret group is meeting. Among them are familiar faces, including a man from a television broadcast. They're trying once again to hack into the broadcast network, aiming to air their message just long enough to wake people up. They're also producing special sunglasses, known as Hoffman lenses, as quickly as they can. Inside the church, this secret group talks about spreading their message further. They believe that only by reaching more people can they break the spell society is under. While eavesdropping, George accidentally bumps into a hidden door and discovers a vault filled with boxes. Though tempted to investigate, he decides it's not the right moment and quietly closes the door. As he gets ready to leave, he unexpectedly runs into the blind preacher. George tries to explain himself, says he was just looking for a closet and meant no harm. The preacher gently touches George's face and hands, as if sensing something important about him. Then he suddenly starts talking about an upcoming uprising and insists that George will play a role in it. Unnerved by the preacher's intensity, George pulls away and quickly exits the church. The preacher calls after him, certain that George will return. "This world may have blinded me, but the Lord has let me see." Soon after, a helicopter flies over the church, causing tension to rise inside. Once it's gone, George borrows a pair of binoculars from a kid nearby and keeps watch. He sees members of the secret group, including Gilbert, carrying boxes from the church and loading them into a car. Before he can make sense of what's happening, Frank shows up. George tries to explain what he saw inside the church, how there was no real choir, just recorded music, but Frank refuses to hear more. He's afraid of losing his job and warns George not to get involved in something dangerous. "I walk a straight line," Frank says. "I don't mess with anyone, and no one messes with me." That night, sirens wail and bright lights shine across the camp. Police vehicles arrive, followed by bulldozers. Without warning, officers begin tearing down tents and shelters, creating panic as residents run in every direction. George watches in shock as the peaceful camp is destroyed in minutes. He sees officers in riot gear pushing, hitting, and chasing anyone trying to flee. The violence escalates. George runs for cover as police beat the blind preacher and the man from the underground broadcasts, ignoring their cries for help. The two are left unconscious, or worse, and anyone who stays behind suffers a similar fate. George manages to find a scared teenager hiding nearby and helps him escape. As they flee, they're blocked by officers and forced to change paths, climbing up into the ruins of the church to hide. There, they find a hidden room where a few survivors are quietly waiting. No one knows why the attack happened. The night is spent in silence, each person trying to process what they just lived through. When daylight comes, the group steps outside to assess the damage. The entire camp is gone, flattened. Strangely, a TV remains, still running absurd commercials, pretending nothing happened. Wasting no time, George sneaks back into the church to revisit the vault he found earlier. The phrase, "They live, we sleep," has been sloppily painted over during the raid. Inside the storage room, he finds one remaining box, the same kind the group had been loading into a car the day before. Just then, a police car drives past. George ducks to avoid being seen. He knows he's just scratching the surface of something much bigger. He quietly escapes with the box. After finding a safe place to hide, George opens it. To his confusion, it's filled with sunglasses. Just sunglasses, nothing else. Unsure what to think, he hides the box in a trash bin for later and keeps one pair with him. As he walks through the city, he decides to put them on. Instantly, the world changes. The color fades, leaving everything in stark black and white. What once looked normal now seems eerie and unnatural. Through the lenses, advertisements and signs display hidden messages: obey, consume, marry and reproduce, watch TV, and more. Magazine covers and billboards lose their stylish appeal and reveal blunt commands. George flips through a magazine. With the glasses, the colorful pages turn into dull, controlling slogans. Without the glasses, it looks perfectly normal again. But the most disturbing change of all? Some people no longer appear human. Their faces transform into grotesque, skull-like creatures, hollow and terrifying. George keeps putting the special glasses on and taking them off, trying to convince himself that he's not hallucinating. The man standing near him looks like a monster through the lenses, but acts completely normal, just calmly staring back. As George walks around, he begins noticing more strange things. On a dollar bill, he sees the words, "This is your God." At traffic lights, he spots hidden devices spreading subliminal messages, all repeating the same word, sleep. He starts to understand the situation. Only certain people can see the truth, while most of society continues on, completely unaware. These strange creatures, disguised as humans, clearly hold power and influence. In a supermarket, George notices a politician on a television screen. Through the glasses, the man's face is revealed as another one of the disguised beings. He talks about a new America, but it's all fake. Overwhelmed by how deep the illusion goes, George reacts loudly. He accuses a nearby woman, also secretly an alien, of not being what she appears to be. The others in the store are confused, not understanding what he means. But the woman does. She realizes George can see her true face. Using a device on her wrist, she alerts her allies and describes George to them. A tall man, unarmed, now a threat. George panics and runs from the store. As he escapes into the streets, he notices more of the creatures watching him. It's not until he strikes one in defense that things take a violent turn. Two officers, also aliens in disguise, stop him. They ask where he got the glasses. George refuses to answer. They try to convince him to join them, offering comfort and reward in exchange for his silence. But George says no. In the scuffle, he overpowers both officers, takes their weapons, and escapes. Soon, more officers show up, and George flees again, this time entering a nearby bank. Inside, he sees many customers are aliens. With no time to lose, he opens fire on the disguised attackers. One of them quickly alerts others and vanishes into thin air before George can stop him. Still wearing the sunglasses, George escapes again, this time chased by a flying drone. He shoots it down and keeps running. On the street, he's confronted by another police officer but scares him off with a shotgun. Needing to hide, George slips into a parking garage. There, he meets a woman named Holly. After confirming that she's human, he forces her to drive him to her home for safety. Once inside her apartment, neighbors greet her with a casual, "Hi, Holly," as they enter. George is exhausted and collapses on the floor, breathing heavily. The stress is finally hitting him like a drug wearing off. He tries to explain everything to her. The glasses, the secret creatures, the way the world is being secretly controlled. But Holly is clearly afraid. She says the only reason she's cooperating is because he has a weapon, and she'll only do what he says as long as he's holding it. George urges her to try the glasses, but she refuses. She doesn't believe him and keeps her distance, afraid of what he might do. When she offers to try them just to calm him down, George finally starts to relax and closes his eyes. Holly quietly plans to escape. She tells him she's thirsty, and George allows her to get a drink. He even apologizes for invading her home and asks her name. She confirms it's Holly. When he asks what she does for work, she reveals she works at a TV station, which immediately grabs George's attention. He remembers that the creatures use TV signals to control people. She works as a programming assistant at Channel 54. Just as George lowers his guard, Holly acts. She grabs a nearby bottle, smashes it over his head, and pushes him through the window. George crashes onto the ground outside, but somehow survives the fall. He loses the glasses and stumbles away before police can arrive. He hides beneath a bridge to recover. The next day, George returns to the construction site, hoping to talk to Frank, the only person he still trusts. But Frank is tense and suspicious. George's actions and the chaos he caused have made him look dangerous. George tries to explain that the ones he attacked weren't humans, they were disguised aliens. But Frank refuses to listen. He says he has a wife and child and doesn't want to get involved. Frank still refuses to help George, saying he has a family and just wants to be left alone. George goes back to the spot where he hid the special sunglasses, but the box is gone. The trash bins have already been emptied. He sees a garbage truck nearby and climbs into the back. After digging through the trash, he finally finds a few pairs that are still intact. By coincidence, Frank shows up and spots George. He gives him some cash, his week's pay, and tells him that's all he can offer. He also makes it clear he doesn't want to get involved any further. George puts on the sunglasses again just to double-check that Frank is human. He is. Feeling desperate, George calls out to Frank and begs him to try the glasses just once, to see what's really going on. Frank refuses, thinking George has gone completely mad. Frustrated, George punches him. What follows is a long, intense fight between the two. They go all in, no holding back. During the brawl, George tries again to get Frank to wear the glasses, but Frank throws them on the ground and tries to crush them. George stops him in time. They keep fighting, both getting tired and bloody, but neither gives up. Eventually, George gains the upper hand and forces the sunglasses onto Frank's face. What Frank sees stuns him. He's shocked, realizing George has been telling the truth all along. Staring in disbelief, Frank sees something hovering in the sky. It's a strange alien craft. Not knowing what to think, He asks George for answers. George pulls him aside to stay out of sight. Now finally on the same side, the two rent a cheap motel room to regroup. Frank watches through the window with the glasses on, trying to process this new, disturbing reality. He asks how long the aliens have been around. George gives a vague answer, which only frustrates Frank. But it's clear these beings are not from Earth. They start discussing what to do next. Frank believes there must be others who know the truth, probably the ones who made the sunglasses. They decide to track them down. During their talk, George opens up about his childhood. He describes a life filled with hardship and abuse. He believes that years of suffering and inequality have made it easy for these invaders to take control. He wants justice, not just for himself, but for everyone trapped in this system. The next morning, Frank heads out to get supplies. When he returns, a man named Gilbert is waiting for him, wearing the glasses. Frank sees he's human and takes him upstairs. Gilbert then gives them weapons and says more and more people are waking up to the truth. Later that evening, George and Frank go to a hidden location where a secret meeting is being held. It's for people like them, those who've seen beyond the illusion. Inside, they find a room full of humans from different walks of life who all understand what's really going on. A woman welcomes them and tells them it's safe to remove their sunglasses here. She hands them contact lenses that work the same way but are more discreet. At first, George and Frank are cautious but eventually agree and put them in. Gilbert joins them again and explains that even human police are hunting them down. They've been told lies, that the group is trying to destroy the government. But all they really want is freedom. The conversation continues. Gilbert explains that these alien beings didn't come by accident. They came for profit. They've been recruiting humans by offering them power and wealth in exchange for loyalty and silence. To the invaders, Earth is just a stop along the way. A resource mine. They trigger disasters, economic crashes, and even climate problems to serve their long-term plan. When Earth has nothing left, they'll move on. A TV in the background plays a clip where someone talks about draining the planet and moving on to the next. George leads them to a table full of weapons. He says they're forming a strike team to hit the enemy hard when the time comes. One of the group members shows Frank a strange alien watch. It can communicate and even teleport, but nobody really knows how to use it yet. Frank takes it, hoping to figure it out. Gilbert gathers everyone and reminds them they don't have enough people yet to start a full rebellion. Many in the group want to fight right away, but Gilbert warns them they stand no chance with just a few weapons. Their main goal should be to find where the mind control signal is coming from and shut it down. If they can do that, maybe people will finally wake up. Suddenly, Holly appears and says the signal isn't coming from where they thought. It's coming from somewhere else, clean and strong. George sees her and tells Frank he needs to talk to her. She looks shaken and asks if he's okay, saying she thought she had killed him. George smiles to calm her down while she fiddles with his old glasses and quietly apologizes for betraying him. Before they can say more, gunfire breaks out. Police have found them. Chaos erupts as the resistance tries to escape. The police fire aggressively, and the group struggles to fight back, but they are overwhelmed. Most don't make it out, but George and Frank manage to run away safely, shooting back as they go. They hide in an alley and keep firing at the alien-controlled police. George wants to go back for Holly, not knowing she's already with them. Frank stops him, saying they need to be smarter. While fiddling with the alien watch, Frank accidentally activates a glowing, pulsing portal. With no other choice, they jump through it. They end up in what looks like a secret alien base underground. The walls are covered with strange symbols. Carefully, they walk down a hallway until they reach a checkpoint where guards dressed like human soldiers report over radio that the resistance is wiped out. They leave, confident their mission is done. George and Frank follow voices to a big formal meeting. Rich humans loyal to the aliens raise glasses while a suited man gives a speech. He proudly announces Earth will soon be fully controlled by the aliens. The crowd cheers, happy for the rewards and power promised for their loyalty. The man shows data proving how well they have manipulated the world. Finally, he says the rebels have been attacked and completely destroyed. George and Frank watch all this in silence, hidden but helpless. George and Frank are approached by a man they recognize from their past. Someone who used to live on the streets but has now switched sides and works for the alien invaders. He assumes George and Frank have joined the aliens too and mocks their worn-out clothes. Thinking they are allies, he offers to show them hidden parts of the alien base. They eventually reach a space terminal where aliens disguised as humans board shuttles heading to other planets. The man admits he doesn't fully understand how the shuttles work, but they can travel anywhere with them. He praises the aliens for being organized and powerful. Next, he takes them to the media center, behind a TV studio. This place, he says, is the heart of the whole operation. From here, satellite signals are broadcast worldwide, keeping people brainwashed and obedient. George cleverly flatters their guide to get closer to the broadcast control room. But when the guards ask for credentials, things fall apart quickly. George and Frank draw their weapons and take down the alien security. They ask where the mind control signal comes from, and the man tells them it's on the roof. As they prepare to go, he begs them to stop, saying the fight is lost, that no good people remain, and that the aliens control everything now. He tries to tempt them with promises of comfort and safety if they pledge loyalty. George and Frank refuse to betray their beliefs. Suddenly, a man bursts in, distracting everyone. Taking advantage of the chaos, their guide teleports away, saying goodbye. George and Frank fight through the studio, clearing out aliens as they go. They move down the hallways, searching for a way to the roof. George stops a nervous woman and demands to know where Holly is, but she's frightened by their weapons. Finally, they reach an office filled with human collaborators and quickly push toward the top of the building. Along the way, they fight more alien forces. The elevators get locked down, so they keep moving on foot. Suddenly, they find Holly, alive and seemingly unharmed. Together, the three fight their way through more enemies until they reach the building's highest floor. But just when they think they're safe, everything changes. Holly turns against them. She shoots Frank in the head, killing him instantly, then steps onto the rooftop. George, unaware of what just happened, follows her alone. There, he finds the satellite dish responsible for sending the global mind control signal. As he gets ready to destroy it, Holly appears behind him with a gun, ordering him to stop. A helicopter arrives, warning him they will open fire and starting a countdown. George doesn't hesitate. He shoots Holly first, then destroys the satellite dish. The helicopter opens fire, riddling him with bullets. As he dies, George gives a final defiant salute. But the damage is done, the signal is gone. Across the world, people finally see the truth. The aliens, who've been hiding in plain sight, on TV, at work, even in personal relationships, are exposed. The illusion is shattered, all because one ordinary man refused to stay asleep to the lies.